is full of incredible natural sights, but the crown jewel may very well be the Lofoten archipelago and its surrounding areas. This otherworldly landscape features fjords, mountains, beaches, and cliffed coastlines. Everything is grand and majestic. Small fishing villages dot the shorelines as the Norwegians have made this imposing area their home for centuries, dating back to the Viking Age. This guide will follow our 12-day itinerary through Northern Norway and down into the Lofoten Islands. It starts and ends in the city of Tromsø. I would highly recommend that you follow a similar route, as there are beautiful hikes and villages in the islands north of Lofoten that I consider unmissable. That said, if you are short on time or want to focus more heavily on the Lofoten Islands, you can fly into Narvik or Bodø. If you fly into Narvik, rent a car and start driving towards Svolvaer. If you fly into Bodø, you'll first have to take a ferry to Sortland, but then you will already be in the heart of the islands. Before we get started, some background information on Norway and this region in particular. The weather this far north is unpredictable. Even in June, we experience some cold, windy, and rainy days. Expect long pants temperatures and be prepared to layer up. A windbreaker and rain jacket are a must. Norway uses the Norwegian krone. As of July 2020, 1 Norwegian krone is equivalent to $0.11 US, so divide those prices by 10 to get the dollar amount. In general, Norway is not a cheap travel destination. Booking Airbnbs is a good way to save money. About half of our accommodations were Airbnbs, and the other half were reserved through Booking.com. Our average price was 431 Norwegian kroner per person per night. There are campgrounds in the region, but we did not use them. As you would expect, the diet in the region revolves around fish. Whether it be fish farms in the fjords or racks of drying cod in the villages, it is clear the fishing industry is a way of life up here. Restaurants are a bit pricey, about 190 kroner for a sandwich, and 300 kroner for an entree. Northern Norway is best traveled by car, so rent one at the airport and be free to go and stop wherever you like as you explore. We rented a minivan for about 11,000 kroner for 12 days, but obviously the costs will be less for a smaller car. The roads in Northern Norway are in very good condition and reasonably wide, so four-wheel drive is not necessary in the summer. E10 is the main road through Lofoten. You will spend a lot of time on this road. This itinerary includes a couple of car ferries. The key to these ferries is to be aware of the schedule since some only run a couple times a day. Also, the schedule can vary by season. The ferries are first come, first served, so my advice would be to arrive at the ferry terminal about an hour prior to scheduled departure to ensure your spot on the boat. Besides the beautiful fjords and mountains, Northern Norway is perhaps most famous for the midnight sun. Lofoten is located about 120 miles north of the Arctic Circle, so for 2 whole months, from late May to mid-July, the sun will not sink below the horizon. For me, it was the highlight of the trip. It just feels completely otherworldly. We went in early June, and while I think we benefited from less crowds, some trails are very muddy from snowmelt, and we had some pretty cold days. If you prefer warmer temperatures and easier hiking conditions, aim for the peak of summer. From September to March, the days are short and the temperatures drop well below freezing, but there is still a great reason to visit Northern Norway, the Northern Lights. Hiking is the primary activity in Northern Norway, and a must to get the views that the region is famous for. The signature hikes can be difficult. They are between 500 and 700 meters of elevation gain, and between 4 to 6 hours round trip. Compared to the US, the trails are much steeper, muddier, and less maintained. I would recommend coming with proper footwear, in decent shape, and with moderate hiking experience. Now on to the itinerary. Fly into Tromsø. I would recommend a half to a full day here. Tromsø is the biggest city in the region with 75,000 people. Pass the time by walking the streets or visiting the Polar Exploration Museum. There is also the Arctic Cathedral and a cable car which takes you to a lookout over the city. When ready, drive an hour west and quickly scamper up Ørnfløya to get views overlooking Sommarøy. In Sommarøy, we stayed at the Arctic Hotel, which was our most expensive night of the trip, but well worth it. The next day, take the car ferry from Brensholmen to Måtind and drive to Fjordgard, where the Segla trailhead is located. Segla is becoming internet famous, but it is a quiet hike because it is not on the Lofoten Islands, so it does not make most travelers' itineraries. Elevation gain is 610 meters, with the last sprint being the most strenuous. Segla means sail, and as the sheer cliff towers over the fjord, you can see why. The Segla hike is one of the main reasons why I recommend starting in Tromsø instead of closer to the Lofoten archipelago. Spend the night in Gryllefjord. In the morning, take the ferry to Andenes. Andenes is part of the Vesterålen archipelago. Do the relatively easy hike up to Måtind. From the top, you will get your first view of Norway's mountainous coastline, and don't forget to write your name in the guest book. Accommodations on Andenes are sparse, but we found a converted schoolhouse in Nordmela that was cheap and cozy. Nordmela ended up being a very picturesque little fishing village. Drive 3 hours south from Andenes to Svolvaer and officially enter the Lofoten archipelago. Sortland is a good spot to stop for lunch. Svolvaer is one of the largest towns in Lofoten with 25,000 residents. I would recommend 2 nights here. The main attraction is the hike up Svolvaer Fløya, which we started at 9 p.m. I would strongly recommend doing at least 1 night hike to fully experience the midnight sun if you visit during the summer months. This hike is challenging. It is very steep and muddy, so take your time. At the top, you are surrounded by the sea and endless mountain peaks, all while overlooking the town of Svolvaer. If you have the courage, there is a famous rock climbing spot off the trail known as Svolvaer. 30 minutes outside Svolvaer is the small fishing village of Henningsvaer, which is definitely worth a walk around. Other activities in Svolvaer include boating, fishing, renting kayaks, and visiting the Lofoten War Museum. From Svolvaer, continue down E10 towards the southwestern tip of the archipelago. Along the way, be sure to stop at Haukland Beach and then take the tunnel to Uttakleiv Beach. These are some of Lofoten's most picturesque beaches. Branch off E10 to Nusfjord, one of the oldest and best preserved fishing villages in Norway, and a UNESCO heritage site. It is essentially an open-air museum and has become a bit of a tourist trap, but it is still well worth the stop and the fee for the traditional architecture. Spend at least 3 nights in the southwestern tip of the Lofoten Islands. Look for accommodations in the towns of Hamnøy, Segla, Reine, Moskenes, Sortland, and Å. We scored a great Airbnb right in the heart of Hamnøy. The flagship hike in Lofoten is to the top of Reinebringen. It is a short but very steep sprint to a viewpoint overlooking the mouth of Reinefjorden, and in particular, the villages of Hamnøy, Segla, and Reine. Unfortunately, the trail was closed for maintenance while we were there, but it is now safer than ever and should be near the top of your list. We did 2 great hikes while staying in Hamnøy. First, we drove and parked in Fredvang and hiked to Reiten. It is a relatively easy hike. The trail meanders through the grassy plateau and never gets too steep. From the top, enjoy the sweeping vistas across the mountains and fjords, but the real treat is the view overlooking Kvalvika Beach 600 meters below. The next day, we boarded a boat from Reine into the fjord and disembarked in Vinstad. From there, we hiked 2 hours to the top of Helvetestinden to overlook Bunes Beach. If you want a break from hiking, the town of Å at the end of E10 is worth a walk around, or take the ferry from Reine to Kirkefjord and walk to Horside Beach. There is also a beach in Ramberg near Fredvang. While staying in Hamnøy, we ate out for 2 dinners. We ate at Anita Seafood in Segla the first night, and then ended up returning 2 nights later because the fish sandwiches and soup were so good and well priced. After wrapping up in Lofoten, it is time for the long 8-hour drive back to Tromsø. We broke up the driving by overnighting in the small town of Bogen. We also detoured into Finland briefly, but that is definitely optional. Once in Tromsø, it is time to fly out and say goodbye to this awesome part of the world. And for me, it is time to wrap up this video. Our itinerary was heavily based on that of the Earth Trekkers. It is not exactly the same, but if you want a text version and more details, I encourage you to read the articles on their blog. 68north.com was also a very good resource when trip planning, so I'll link that as well. Hopefully this was helpful for anyone planning a trip to Northern Norway. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will try to get back to you.